So today we are talking about dreaming reality into being. This is something that we are all doing constantly. It's just not talked about. I think in the past 20 years, 30 years, there's been a shift in awareness where people are starting to understand that, oh, wait, we actually do create our own reality. We actually are dreaming this existence into being. But for most people, it still remains this kind of vague notion where it becomes more of a concept of life coaches of, you need to have your goals and you need to create your plan and then you can execute it and then you can build the life that you want to live. And that process works because of this underlying concept of dreaming that's happening all the time, where out of these mental formations that arise in our mind, they color our perception and literally builds our experience in our world. And what makes it of interest to those of us who are interested in liberation, actually awakening, is if we can understand this concept of dreaming, we can pull back the curtain and actually see what's underneath the dream, which can be terrifying because that means it's the annihilation of this dream that you've worked so hard to create. But we won't go down that road quite yet. Today, in these few minutes, I want to talk more about this process of dreaming and how it works and how we can actually start to utilize it instead of just being kind of carried along. Because what happens is we get caught up in other people's dreams. We see this happen throughout history. Somebody has the really good idea, and then they convince everybody else around them, and then that spreads and spreads, and more people. And it's not that it's good or bad. Some really cool things have happened. We have cities now. Those were dreams at one point. There was a time in our history where we all lived in temporary structures, or if we were really lucky, there were some nice caves, but we usually didn't stay there. We would move and travel and have to rebuild our living arrangements for our basic survival over and over again. And then somebody had this dream of like, I'm sick of moving all the time. I just want to stay put. And so they put energy and attention into that dream, and suddenly there was building structures. And this happened all over the world. That's the interesting thing about dreams, is they're not solid. They're pervasive, and they can appear all over the planet at the same time. The same dream can appear at the same time on opposite sides of the earth. One way that that's been described is these dimensions of awareness open as our entire planet and solar system and galaxy move through the cosmos. It's interacting with different energies, different planes of awareness, and sometimes one opens and then suddenly somebody has a brilliant idea on this side of the world, and at the same time another person has this brilliant idea on that side of the world. And it's because they had this ability of dreaming that they could tap into that little packet of awareness, if you will, and pull it into their mind and then manifest it in the world. So, like I said, we're all doing this all the time. But some people are really, really good at it. And some people are not. And it's a skill that we can work on. It's one that we can play with. And we can start, as we develop our mind and strengthen how well we can hold our focus. That's the underlying skill that allows us to actually start working with dreaming. So again, on one level, it really is the life coach version of like think of a goal that you want to achieve. But I want you to go a little deeper. I want you to ask, what is it about that goal that's attracting me? Why is it that I want that thing? Is this really something I want? Because, as I said, some people are much more powerful dreamers than others. So it's very easy to get caught up in somebody else's dream. So really start to pay attention. Now this is another layer of our mindfulness where we're paying attention to the thoughts and feelings that arise in our mind. When a certain desire arises, look at it closely and ask yourself, is this mine? Is this actually my desire? Is this something that I actually want to experience? And if it is, then, do the things that need to be done. You write out the goals, make the plans, put the energy and effort into it, and have fun with it. Don't get attached to the result, because then you'll just find yourself on the roller coaster of like, yay, everything's going great. Oh, nothing's going good. Yay, it's going good. No, it's not going. And you're missing the point of the practice. The practice is to learn how your mind works. So instead of just being thrown around, instead of riding that roller coaster, you're actually aware of what's happening. You start to see that, oh, there actually is a roller coaster. We still, because we have bodies and we're still going to be active, we'll probably get on the roller coaster. But by becoming aware that this dreaming is something that we can choose which dream to play on, we start to see that there are multiple rides available. There's not just this one roller coaster that everybody's on. Growing up, the popular roller coaster ride that I was conditioned with is what they call the American dream. You're supposed to have the house and the car and the career. And that was the dream that was broadcast over and over again. And then also there was the underlying current of Russia is bad. This was the Cold War time. Russia is bad, but you want the house and you want the family and the car and the happy, peaceful life in the suburbs. And then the dream that has happened as society has developed, now we're deep in the dream of consumerism. I think that really hit in the late 80s, 90s, where it's like, you need to consume. You need to get stuff, use it up, throw it out, and buy more stuff. Because that was important for the corporate machine, right? That's this ongoing consumption. And throughout history, there's been all sorts of different, very powerful dreams. There's the dream of the master race, right? That's been a popular option for a long time. Seems to be making a comeback, which we don't have to buy into that. I would highly recommend that we don't buy into that. But I wanted to point it out because it's out there. And for a long time, the way that those in power have gotten others to kind of buy into their dream has been through force and fear. So we're going to destroy you unless you go along with this. You know, your loved ones will die if you don't go along with this. You will die if you don't go along with this. We'll starve you if you don't go along with this. So that's been the motivating factor for a lot of years to pull people in the dream. But it's interesting because we have the technology we have now that is not as effective anymore. People are not as willing to buy into that. It's like, I don't think anyone is going to buy into a war just because somebody says we should be afraid. That it keeps getting pushed, right? We feel it. We feel that dream coming. But I think throughout the world, people have kind of figured out, like, well, wait, that's not good for anybody. So no, I'm not going to buy into that dream. What I see happening as a means of controlling the dream now is decision fatigue. So we're just pushed out so much information, so many choices. You can do this, you can do that, you can do the other thing, you can do this, you can have this, you can have that. Where it just becomes too much for the mind. It feels overwhelming. You get exhausted. And so you reach this point where you're just like, you know what, fine, I don't even care anymore. Just give me whatever food is available, give me whatever job is available, give me whatever house is available, give me whatever relationships are available right now. That's the least amount of effort, and I'll just go along with it, even though it's not really my dream. Really, it's not really what I want, but I'm just so tired because of all the input, right? You guys all know what I'm talking about. But if we start to understand that there is this process of dreaming that's happening, you know, and dreaming doesn't just take place at night. This is happening all day long, where we're having this dream of life. But if we look at our nighttime dreams, that's a way that we can start to train ourselves for the daytime dream. Some people are automatically, just from past life knowledge, they're really good at lucid dreaming. They can go to sleep and wake up in their dream and then start to control what's happening in the dream. And just knowing that that's a possibility is helpful, because we can look at that happens in our astral world and start to click in and say, well, wait, the astral world's not all that different than the physical world. Physical world moves a little bit slower because it's denser, it's thicker. But just like somebody can be in a dream and maybe the dream isn't fun anymore, you know, like, you know what, I'm kind of not having a good time in this horror show of a dream, let me switch it to somewhere else. Like, example happened a really long time ago. I had this dream where I was in this little shed and there was just thousands of spiders everywhere. And I was really creeped out by spiders at the time. So I was like, ah, and then so I immediately woke myself up. And I'm like, but then I realized, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not going to get chased out of my own dream by a bunch of spiders. So I made the determination, I'm going to go back there. And so I went right back to sleep, went right back into that shed full of spiders, and calmed myself and found the door and opened it and walked through, and then went flying and had this amazing experience. So we can do the same thing in our waking life. If we find ourselves trapped in a room full of spiders, if we find ourselves trapped in a life that is not fun, is not bright, is not progressive, we can instantly change it. We can find that door and open it. Now again, that being able to do that requires a couple things. It requires, first of all, an awareness that that's even an option. Because most people are trapped in a dream that isn't even theirs. It's a dream their parents gave them. It's a dream their society gave them. Sometimes it's even a dream our neighbor gave us. You know, I have a neighbor who's very empathetic. He's very powerful, and it's very interesting because he goes through like really highs and really lows. And how my house is situated, it's not really easy to talk to my neighbor, so I never actually speak. But I can feel it, like when I go to my bathroom in the morning. It's just like all of a sudden getting hit by this wave of, sometimes it's sorrow, and it's like, oh, really bad day. And that's a type of dream that he's caught in. The other day it was one of elation, so that was a really fun ride. It's like all of a sudden I was just like, oh, I'm really happy. And then I realized, like, oh, I'm in this room that's very close to my neighbor's house, and just the energy of his dream is so powerful that it hits my house in that particular spot. And then I walk out of the bathroom, and then it's like, oh, I'm not feeling it anymore. But if I'm not aware, you can get hit with something like that other person's dream, and think that it's yours. You take ownership of it, and now all of a sudden you're walking around with these feelings and perceptions, these ideas that aren't even yours. And then you could spend the whole day figuring out, well, why do I feel so sad? Why do I feel so heavy? Or why am I so happy all of a sudden? And happiness, we usually just kind of go with it, but pay attention to where you live, what different dreams are coming in your mind. So that is the first step to changing it, is to actually be aware that this process is happening, where these thoughts and feelings and emotions, these different perceptions, are all colliding into our being. And then the mind is so powerful, it takes all of that information, and then from the third eye projects a reality. And then we live it and we accept it as if it was our own. But if you start to figure out that this is happening, now wait a minute, let me see, is this actually my dream? And if it's not, then you just let it go. You say, oh, that's not me. That's not mine. And then now you have to figure out, well, what is my dream? What is this dream that I am living right now? What's actually happening that is growing within me that I am projecting out onto the world? And then if it turns out to be a nightmare, then the good news is you can change it. Because now all of a sudden you've taken responsibility and you're like, oh, I'm creating this nightmare situation. So let me dig a little deeper and figure out, well, what is the dream that I want to live? That's where a lot of people get stuck. So like, I want something, but I don't want this. So this is why we have things like Trikaya Buddhism. This is why we have spiritual practice. Because it gives us an alternate dream. It gives us a place to hold our attention that is very bright and beautiful and empowering, and allows us to grow in such a way that we eventually become strong enough and willing enough to actually go and peel back the dream and see what's underneath it. So I'll be very upfront. Like, this whole spiritual practice that we do is a method of dreaming. It's not the end. It's a means. There are many spiritual practices out there that have become so consumed by their own dream that they forgot that it's a dream. They forgot that there's actually a purpose beyond what their practice is. So I try to remind people that yes, we teach this beautiful practice, but it's just a practice. If you're just starting off, that can be really confusing. So if you're brand new to this and you're watching this, just ignore that part for now. File it away for later. This practice of dreaming, of actually taking responsibility for the dream, is very, very powerful, because not only are you impacting your own life and your own being, you can actually, just like my neighbor with his moods, radiate that energy out, radiate that dream out, not in a forceful way where you're like trying to manipulate people and pull them into your dream. There's no need for that. But just by holding your dream of light, of having a beautiful, prosperous, harmonious life, and holding that so strong that no matter what dream tries to imprint on you, it just doesn't work. You just keep radiating your dream. Then that creates these ripples in the world. And other people who might be caught up in nightmares or caught up in other people's not so happy dreams feel your dream, and they're like, well, hey, I didn't know that was an option. I didn't know being happy in this world was an option. Is that really a thing? And you can be like, yes, it is. Meditate, practice mindfulness. Come discover Buddhism. Find your way to liberation. So on this path as Trikaya Buddhists, we don't dream just for ourselves. If anything, the dream we know really has nothing to do with us. We're just vehicles. We are messengers, if you will, just radiating into this world providing another option to the mainstream dreams of control and manipulation and power and force that are out there. We actually can and do live very bright, happy lives, and that's available to everyone. But you can't force it on somebody. You can't grab somebody by the shoulders and shake them and say, "You will be happy." I've tried, it doesn't work. And we can be very subtle about it. We can be a little more blatant about it. And so I on Facebook, I found out about this project. They call it the Padmasambhava Treasure Net. And it's these statue plaques that are being, some benefactor in Asia decided, it's really expensive because they have made like 30,000 of these, and they're sending them out to people for free all over the world. And all they're asking is that they be placed in nature. And we're going to do that this coming week, so I wanted to bring it in just so people could see it before we go put it out in the desert. And this is a type of dreaming. This is a dream that this group is putting forth. So Padmasambhava was a teacher, very powerful Buddhist teacher. He actually united all the Buddhist schools in Tibet, so he's credited with bringing Buddhism to Tibet and making it entrenched enough that it survives, even though Tibet was taken over by China in 1950. Tibetan Buddhism still survives even outside of Tibet. So a very, very powerful dreamer. And he made a prophecy, which I'm not big on prophecy because there's so many translation issues. But he made a prophecy that there would be devastating things happening in 2030. But as part of the prophecy, he said, but if you start in 2024 and do these certain things, that catastrophic events will be mitigated. So one of the things, one of the simple things that anybody can do is just chant the Padmasambhava mantra. And you can look it up online. But another thing that was recommended was to take relics from different Buddhas, which are like pieces of hair or bone that were left behind after their body died, and combine it with precious elements and iron and a whole bunch of materials and make these statues, and then imbue it with different prayers and mantras, and basically consecrate it in a very specific way. So that's all been done, and they've sent these out to all these people, and the idea is to put them in different places in nature, and it creates this energetic net of Padmasambhava energy around the entire globe, which then emits a certain frequency of dream that people can tap into. And this particular dream is one of liberation, one of harmony and world peace. And so it says on the back that anyone that sees this statue will be liberated. So if you happen to be out in the mountains somewhere, out in nature, on a nice little hike, and you happen across one, you'll understand its purpose. But even if you don't, that energy of that dream is still there. And then even as it disintegrates, because it's made of natural material and putting them into oceans and into lakes and rivers and on mountainsides. Even as it breaks down, that dream is going into the earth and into the subtle layers of this planet and this world. So that's an example of a global dream that we can participate in. So my question, I want to leave you with this, is as you practice your mindfulness, as you pay attention to these thoughts that are coming up in your mind, and then those thoughts start to solidify, ask yourself, what am I creating? What am I dreaming into being right now in this moment? So if you find yourself in a thought pattern of worry and freaking out about something, catch yourself and say, wait a minute, is this what I want to dream into being? And just stop and refocus on what you actually do want to dream into being. A fun way to kind of neutralize or put your mind in neutral when you are caught in one of those death spirals, you're just spinning out into the gutter, is you can just say, what if everything is exactly as it needs to be right now? What if everything is exactly how it needs to be right now? So whatever mental freak out is happening, whatever physical issues are arising, what if that's how it needs to be right now? That snaps the line and suddenly puts you in a place of total acceptance and allows you to now look at, okay, this is how everything is supposed to be right now. This is how it's all needs to be for me to take my next step. What is my next step? And now all of a sudden you have that power of presence to say, oh, well, my next step is to make a phone call or send an email or research something or rest. But if you're caught up in that spiral, then there's no rest. there's no room to actually discriminate and see what the options are. Because maybe you discover that you were caught up in somebody else's dream. You were living out what somebody else wanted, and you truly believe that's what you wanted, and then suddenly you wake up and realize that, oh, I've just spent the last 10 years doing what somebody else wanted me to do, and I never ever wanted to do that. And then you have all the feelings and the resentments and the anger and then the frustrations and all the feelings. But in that moment, if you can just say, well, what if everything is as it needed to be right now? That just cuts through all of that. And now it doesn't mean that you have to keep doing what you were doing, because you really can't, because now you have awareness of, oh wait, that's not my dream. My heart is not in doing that. But now you have the opening, the space to say, well, what is my heart in? Where is my heart leading me? Where is the purity? Where is the brightness? And then take steps to do that. The more that we do this, the more that we follow our own dream, that brightness, the yesness of Dharma, of truth, the more natural it becomes. The stronger we become, the easier it is to say yes to the Dharma and no to anything that's not. And of course, sometimes you'll get caught up in somebody else's dream. This is why we call it practice. We keep practicing and we just return back to the present. So I invite you to the Padmasambhava treasure net to take a moment and dream into being a world of harmony, of prosperity, of joy, and of liberation for all beings. So let's meditate. Thank you for joining me on YouTube.